Welcome, everyone. My name is Mitch Thomas. I'm eager to share with you some of the best practical, tactical, nitty-gritty bits of advice I can give you about buying a home. And I just want to address something up front. When I get on webinars, I always wonder, what's the catch? Am I actually going to learn anything? And the answer is yes, you are absolutely going to learn a lot today, and there's no catch. What I get from it, you might want to hire me later. So let's just get that out of the way and just know that hey, this is something you're going to actually learn a lot of information from. It isn't a long webinar. We're going to fly through it. Hopefully, we've answered a ton of your questions going through it today, going through this process. Just so you know, it's 100% okay for you to keep your camera on or off. It's totally your choice. And then if you have individual questions, want to talk to me after the webinar, feel free to book a Google Meet session with me at flcoastrealestate.com. Again, that's flcoastrealestate.com. Okay, so just going to jump in here. There's a lot to cover. I know you have limited time. So, just want to talk about it. Now, how are you feeling about the process? You know, you're probably a first-time home buyer. Maybe this is the second time you bought a home. You kind of forgot the steps you got to go through. You may not know where really to start. So, here's the thing. I remember what it was like the first time buying a home, and I was just blown away at how emotional and stressful and uncertain it felt, and really what I didn't know. And so my goal for you is to make you feel at ease and in control in this process. Grab something to write with. You're going to want to take notes for sure. Just a little about me. I've been in real estate for 15 years. I've sold hundreds of properties and worked with many first-time home buyers just like you. And I really love working with first-time home buyers. There's just so much to learn, such a huge learning curve. Um, Not to toot my own horn, but first-time home buyers love me because of the education that I give. There's really a ton to learn, and I'm going to help you navigate through this process. So really, enough about me. Let's get moving on. What you're here for today. So here's a little bit of a rundown of what we'll be going over. The mistakes really that buyers make during the buying process. For first-time home buyers, they don't take advantage of first-time home buyer programs. They do the right things, but in the wrong order. They choose the house over the neighborhood. They get intimidated by the numbers, and they don't hire a gladiator. So like I said, there's a lot to learn for first-time home buyers. It's difficult to know where to start and what things are most important along the way. In my years in business, I've seen a lot of buyers end up in the wrong deal, the wrong house, and that's because they weren't informed about the process and the options, and because they didn't have the patience to wait for the right deal. I mean, sometimes you go find a house on the first go, and sometimes it takes seeing multiple homes, and sometimes it takes multiple offers to actually get an accepted contract. So let's talk about mistake number one, and this is a biggie. So pay attention. This can make the difference in the thousands of dollars. Number one mistake is buyers don't take advantage of first-time home buyer programs. And just raise your hand if you just want to leave money on the table. Yeah, yeah, I didn't think so. So if you don't already know this, there are many first-time homebuyer programs, and they're based on your situation. They may be based on specific location of your home. Different banks and mortgage companies offer different programs, so you have to search around to find the right program for you. Um, is down payment a concern for you? If that's one of the things keeping you up at night about the process, listen up. There are options out there to help you in this process, help you out with the money. We just have to find out what you need and what program works best for you. Some of the programs offer grants. They're based on your profession. Like I said, location. So the key what you really need to know in this process, you need to find what offers really match up with what you need right now. Banks and mortgage companies want your business, and they all do it a little bit different. So you gotta search around and find the right one. So again, real quick, if you can't stay the whole time, or if you have questions or just want to talk with me later, you can book a meeting with me at flcoastrealestate.com. All right. Mistake number two, buyers do the right things, but in the wrong order. Um, have you ever made this mistake? You wanted to make this beautiful cake. Skipped a few steps and it came out still cake, right? Yeah, but maybe not exactly what you were hoping for. So, so what it does look like to start off in doing things right in the wrong order. You can tell me if you're guilty of any of these things. My personal observation is that many first-time home buyers wind up with the wrong house and the wrong deal because they need more education and more patience. So, have you been stalking Zillow for years? Did you say, "Hey, look, I can't buy this house in this neighborhood or this price because it's unattainable"? Are you, have you called on a few for sale by owner signs and walked through some builder models, visited a few open houses? Sometimes you just get tired and just give in to whatever is just the easiest thing around there. We don't want you to do that. What we want you to do is to make an informed decision about what it is that you need, your family needs, and use your specific criteria to make it, the most financially beneficial to you during this process. So mistake number three, choosing house over neighborhood. This happens really so often. Look, I'm going to be your best friend here and I'm going to tell you what you don't want to hear, but you're going to walk into a home, you're going to think it's gorgeous, you're going to fall in love with it. Um, at the end of the day, it is about loving your house, but it's also about understanding the surroundings, and knowing that you're, making a good investment and being in the right location for yourself. So, for instance, you might work in Jacksonville, but you live in Saint Augustine, and the drive could be up to an hour. Is that something you really want to do every day? We have to talk about those things and make sure that you're making the right decisions. So sometimes it may be worth getting a house that's a little more dated, that's in good shape over a brand new build because it makes better life balance sense to you. So you have to ask yourself really what's going to make you happy with a home. Most people own their first home 2 to 7 years. Um, when they come back to me later, and I've always asked, like, what did you really love about this home? And really the things that people say are, outside of specific features of the home, they really talk about what's around the home. Okay, I had easy access to Publix, I had easy access to the school, I had a cop live in my neighborhood, I felt really secure. All of those things come into play. So the simple truth is you can't know everything. There are some things that we can prepare for and some things that we cannot. Let's say you have a power line overhead going across the backyard. That's something that we cannot do anything about. We know that might be a negative for some buyers in the future. Maybe it's not a negative to you. Maybe it's not negative to a lot of buyers. But we do know we're going to take that in consideration when we're looking at homes. Is there a highway in your backyard? Essentially, do you have a wall blocking a highway? Does that create a lot of noise? Is that going to make it harder for you to resell your home in the future? Now, at the end of the day, it all comes down to what price you get the property for. So, these negatives can be overcome just based on price. Um, Real quick, again, if you need to talk with me, flcoastrealestate.com. You can hit me up after this webinar is over. Mistake number four really is getting intimidated by the numbers. And average home buyers don't dig in deep enough into the numbers. Um, uh, I know you're not average, but look, we're going to cover the bases to make sure you kind of understand what's going on. The costs associated with purchasing a home include things like appraisal, attorney fees, prepaid taxes, insurance. You may need these funds in addition to the down payment. So it's really good to understand how much money you're going to need up front, how much money that you can get from, maybe a first-time homebuyers program to help you along the way. Maybe we need to know all of your things so we can negotiate that into a deal. So the bad news is all the fees can be expensive. The good news is we can have somebody else pay for it most of the time. Again, when we look into the right programs, we have the right seller. The market has tilted from a seller's market to a buyer's market. So sellers are a lot more willing to give to help you purchase their home than they were in the past. So um, sometimes you'll find that homes may look unattainable. you look at that house and you're like, oh, it's $350,000. It's $20,000 over my budget. Well, here's the things to take into consideration. It's not just about the house and the payment itself on the house, because we need to calculate that, but we also need to calculate things like HOA fees, CDD fees. So overall, you might find a house that looks more expensive, but it's actually cheaper. Um, it looks more expensive, looks better, looks nicer, but it's actually cheaper than what you perceive as a lesser house. So keep that in mind when you're going through this process. Again, all take advantage of all the programs, all the things that you can negotiate into a deal. And if you have patience, you're going to get in the right deal. Mistake number 5 is, look, you don't hire the right real estate agent to help navigate you through this process. The big thing is that, you may be tempted to go do this yourself. And if you want to do that, that's great. I wouldn't recommend it because you don't really know the process. You don't do this every day. There's lots of little things to know about the process, but also lots of things that can cost you money. So look, my job as a real estate agent, as a broker associate, is it to walk you through a home. Anybody can do that. Contrary to how it looks on HGTV, my job's not just to show you houses. My job is to get you the right deal, to fight for you, to help you negotiate hard. So, really, what I want for you is I want your kids to go to a better school. I want to find that house that you think is not possible, and make it possible. I want you to get better equity earlier, and of course, I want you to love me and send me referrals down the road. So, I remember the first time I bought, my agent said at the time that I wasn't going to find the house that I wanted in my price range. I remember this so vividly. I wasn't a real estate agent at the time. We looked at a lot of homes, and at the end of the day, I found a house that I really loved in the perfect neighborhood that I knew well, and it was a hoarder's house. And so when most people walked through it, they couldn't see what the bones were. They couldn't see what this house actually was, and I knew what it was. I knew it had hardwood floors. I knew it had great structure. The finishes actually were pretty good. There was just so much stuff in the house that no buyers could see past it, and that gave me the opportunity to go in and buy a house at a great deal, a house that at the time my real estate agent said it was impossible to get. So look, we're going to use every tactic we can. Will every tactic work to get you the house you want? I mean, the answer is no. But we're going to put out all the stops, and we're going to try to get it done for you. So the first timer oversights, there are a few things you overlook I want to highlight real quick. Number one is a must, must, must. You do have to go get pre-approved, and you have to find the right lender and the right program. This is the kind of the hard start. And this is a step that you can't skip, because this will save you thousands of dollars. Number two, you don't get an inspection, and that is crazy. Look, once you get it under contract, the thing is, an inspection really is there to help make sure that you understand the property. You're going to get a seller's disclosure from the seller, but they may not disclose everything. They may have forgotten something. They may not know something. So an inspection is there to help show you, okay, is there anything big kind of looming around this house? You want to do it, did a general inspection, a pest inspection. It's really going to help you understand the investment that you're making and if it's worth it. And if it's not worth it, you can walk away and you haven't wasted thousands of dollars. Number 3 is overstretching the budget, which means you have no emergency fund, which means you have no lifestyle flexibility. You're house poor. We do not want that for you. We want to make sure that you're staying within a budget that's comfortable. You've looked at all the fees. You understand what you're going to be paying for this property, and make sure that that works for you and your family. Um, uh, and really, the fourth mistake is really kind of getting towards closing once you've gotten it under contract. Some people go apply for other credit. They might be so excited. They're like, I'm going to go buy new furniture, and they put it on credit. Do not do that. Do not make that mistake. They will pull your credit right before closing to make sure that you still fit within the guidelines of lending. So don't do anything. Wait till after you've gotten the house before you go put a lot of furniture on credit. Um, Credit reporting. Before we move on, let's talk about credit real quick. It's a sensitive issue to some people, and we can talk about that one-on-one if you want. But there are ways to fix your scenario. Sometimes it takes, a few months. Sometimes it takes 6 months. Sometimes it takes a year. But if that's your problem, you really need to address it, whether you're going to buy a house or not. It's going to help you with everything in the future. It's going to help you, the rates you get on credit cards, the rates you get on really anything, car loans. So we want to make sure that if this is an issue for you, that you're not scared of it, that you're going to attack this problem. And later on, it's really going to help you when you go to buy a house. Um, so there's 5 steps involved in buying a house in 30 days. So let's get to the second half of this webinar. I'm going to tell you a story about how to buy a home in a few easy steps. And we're going to go through the lens of how much money you do or don't need. And when we're done, you'll have an estimate of how much cash you'll need to make this work. And we can always, put a sharper pin on that one-on-one. So step one, how much do I need? Who's going to be asking me for money? How much? When? Buyers are responsible to pay real estate agent commissions. Sometimes the seller pays that. And this is paid at closing along with remaining closing costs and down payment. So closing costs, like we talked about earlier, appraisal. You're going to have other additional costs in there that we also talked about, inspections and so on. This is one of the items that the seller may pay some or all of. Like I said, this is turned from a seller's market to a buyer's market. So again, if we know what you need up front, we can negotiate these things into a deal. Let's move on. Sometimes it takes a long time. The process can be longer depending on your specific situation. I've had clients walk into one home and just buy it, and it was done. It was perfect, easy. And I've had clients have to see 30, 40 homes until they found the right home. I don't have a timeline. I'm not going to push you. I want you to find the right house for you and your family. And you should do the same for yourself. Whether you're working with me or not, it's important that you take time to define the right investment. This is an investment. This is a big investment. Um, okay, upfront costs, the cash you need to buy a home. Let's say you want to purchase a $400,000 home. In some areas, you're gonna have to pay an earnest money deposit, and that deposit is really saying to the seller, "Hey, look, we're serious about buying this home. We're going to put a deposit down, and your brokerage is going to hold that, just to say we're serious. We're not just going to wake up in the morning and decide we don't like it and try to walk away." And there's contingencies to walk away from the deal, like inspections and stuff like that. We could talk about that further, but we're talking about money right now, so really we want to talk about, in some markets, some areas, 1% is kind of what you can consider you need for upfront costs for the earnest money deposit. But I've seen sellers take as little as $250 or $500. It really just depends on the seller. But for budgeting sake, let's just say you need $2,000. We're going to, be real conservative here and just kind of put a bigger number out there so you're kind of in a great place. Again, it really depends on your situation, the property you're offering on. So once once they've accepted the contract, great. Now we're under contract. There's a lot of activity in this first stage. The lender is asking you for updated documents. The title company and the attorneys asking you for information. They're helping that whole side of the process keep moving forward. And before I go further, this is very important. Respond quickly to them. They make this process happen. At the end of the day, you need that loan to buy this property. You need to respond to them quickly so they don't have any hiccups along the way. Okay. Another quick tip working with them is everything they ask for, keep in a file. They'll likely ask for it again. I know this can be frustrating, but just stay positive. Listen to their advice, respond quickly. It'll help you along the way. And then, of course, we're going to be on you about inspection, survey, all the stuff you need to do to inspect this home to make sure that it's a good investment. So let's say Average for inspections is going to be around $700 to $800. Surveys probably going to be something around that as well. So let's just say you need about $3,500 total right now at this moment. Step three. At this point, you've completed all the inspections, you review the results, and so you have some decisions to make. Do I terminate the contract? I just don't like this house. There's too much going wrong with it. I'm going to walk away. Number two, you pick items for the seller correct, and you're like, hey, look, if the seller fixes these, then I'm willing to stay in this deal. And then three, you can also negotiate money in lieu of fixing things. So you might see that, hey, it's got these little things wrong with it, but I'm okay with that. I'm handy. But maybe we can negotiate a little bit more, like towards closing costs or a little bit off the price. Obviously, we'll talk about all those options when you get to that point. Step four, after you get past the inspection period and the initial period where the lenders and attorneys are asking you a bunch of questions, it's going to feel like everything's kind of gone quiet. You're not going to be hearing from anybody because you've kind of taken care of everything. You're waiting for them to process the loan at this point. So during this time, if you haven't already, if they haven't already reached out to you for appraisal, just make sure you're aware that appraisal has to happen. That's going to cost you about $500 to $700. So right now, total we're about $4,200 in out-of-pocket expenses. It's going to be slightly lower, slightly higher. Again, we're trying to just give you an idea of what kind of money you're going to need. And then step five, yeah, you're there. We're going to closing. You'll go to closing, pay your down payment, any closing costs and fees not covered by the seller. Your remaining closing costs are really up to you. And if you tell me, hey guys, this is how much money I need, this is how we can get the deal done, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to be working for the whole time. So again, through this webinar, I hope that you've learned that there's really two of the five are really the biggest. And the number one by far is that you need to know what program works best for you. Number two, you need to be making the right investments. So do the inspections, but also do your due diligence. Go knock on neighbors' doors. Make sure that this is the right place for you. Make sure that you're seeing, hey, how far is my job from here? How far are my kids' schools? When you're hitting these 2 points, these are real big points. You want to make sure that you've covered those to make the right investment. So that's all I have for now. If you feel like you need to reach out for me to talk a little bit further about your specific situation, just hit me up at Florida FL Real Estate, flcoastrealestate.com. You can book a Google Meet meeting with me, and we'll just go through whatever it is that you need or you're thinking about your specific situation. There's no obligation. We're just going to have a chat. Again, flcoastrealestate.com.